Tone audio. Check it out.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Sends and Suffers podcast. I am your host, Mario Stanley. I am excited to bring you today's episode. I had an opportunity to talk with David from Kaya. He is part of the team that is bringing the Kaya Climbing app to you in gyms, outdoor crags, and the world at large. We taken over, boys and girls. But it was pretty cool to talk to them. It was so interesting to hear about a company that really wants to return the power of data, of things that we create into the hands of the users. And I'm really just talking about the thing that stood out to me. This podcast goes all over the world. And let me be very clear. David is a man who has been in the climbing game forever, and someone I honestly aspire to have a half of his accolades at some point in time in my life. But I'm going to keep on doing me because that's the only thing I know how to do. As always, I want to thank you guys for listening to Sends and Suffers podcast. If you guys haven't already, please go to sendsandsuffers.com. Check out. Please join our Patreon. We are now sharing all of our information, extra bonus videos, extra audio clips, all the things. Like anything extra is definitely going there. We still are mailing out stickers. I do want to let everybody know that there is going to be a little hiatus of anything coming out in the mail for probably the next 18 weeks or so, just because I am going to be traveling, recording some podcasts, and just kind of getting out there after COVID and everything being locked down and now back into the work and grind. It is time to see the world and get some vitamin D and send, clip bolts, cry, suffer on the wall. Well, I'm not going to let you guys suffer anymore listening to my voice. So let's go ahead and get into this episode. This episode was brought to you obviously by Kaya. They definitely sponsored this episode. And if you guys don't already use their app, I highly recommend it. Albert OK, my buddy, said it best. The best the best coach you will ever have in your life is yourself. So why not get all the tools that will help you be the best version of you that you can be? Today, my guest is David Gurman. So I'm going to let him introduce himself to you guys. And yeah, let's just go ahead and get into this. David, how are you?
I'm doing very well. Thanks, Mario. How are you?
I'm doing all right, man. So as I asked everybody on my show, because I'm assuming people listening to this, maybe a small bit of them know who you are and the rest of them don't. So who are you, where you're from, and what is your connection to the outdoors or the outdoor industry?
Well, my name is David Gurman. I live in Truckee, California with my wife and two daughters. And I'm a rock climber of about 25 years, a design entrepreneur and a data artist, a TED speaker and TED fellow. And my connection to the climbing industry is that presently I'm the co-founder and chief product officer for Kaya Climb. The Climbers app, like where, we have all indoor route data and outdoor route data and a bunch of really cool performance analytics. And so that's my current connection to the outdoor industry. And that's as of about a year and a half ago. But prior to that, I hadn't worked in the outdoor industry since I was route setting and then pouring and shaping holes and building climbing walls for Pusher in Salt Lake City in like 1998. So I did that for a couple years while I was in Salt Lake. And prior to that, I've worked in gyms all over the country, in the Powerhouse in Las Vegas, Sport Rock in Washington, D.C. And then I worked for this guy, Brian McCrae, resoling shoes with him in the basement of what was, I guess, Blue Ridge Outdoors in the New River, West Virginia. But that was like 20 years ago. And since then, I left and had pursued a career in technology, apps, and design entrepreneurship, and come full circle. Now I'm back in the industry, working with Kaya.
You have lived the entire full climbing professional saga. Like, I really feel like that was what that was. You've gone full circle. That I did not know you shaped and you worked with for Pusher. What was your relation to Pusher and Boone?
Yeah, so I showed up in Salt Lake in 1998 with my wife, Shauna Jacoby, and we were just psyched to climb and compete. Back then it was like the PCA was the climbing competition series that was going on, and all we wanted to do was rock climb. And so we moved to Salt Lake. I started working for Pusher. I was really inspired by Boone and MC, my call. David Bell, Rob Gilbert were there, and then a bunch of friends who were back in the pouring room with me, Todd Verone, Jim Wolf, Luke Cudney, and we were just pouring plastic and shaping holds. And Mark Russo, who shaped the original Boss. I don't know if you remember that hold, that big Fontainebleau,
yes, I
rippling
do.
Sloper thing.
Yes, yeah, that thing's, yeah. Anyone who's climbed long enough has things to say about that hold.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. Those guys actually went on a trip to Font and came back, and Mark went into the pouring room and shaped it up.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I worked there for a while and just was completely inspired by that community because there was so many really good, proficient rock climbers. Like everybody was at a top level. And it was no big deal to be around all these like really high performing climbers all the time, but everyone was so humble and welcoming, and it really didn't matter what level you climbed at. People were just like to be around each other and to be creative. So that was my early intro, and Boone really ushered that space in because he was kind of like leading the charge. Like I remember the first time I did Copperhead, which is one of Boone's early. At the time, I think he rated it V11 in Little Cottonwood, and I think now it's rated V10 or something. But I was just so psyched to, trace in his footsteps and try to do problems that he had done. And at the same time, we'd go out with the crew, and there would be a myriad of levels of climbers, like artists who could climb V2, and then, people like Boone and others who are climbing, super hard top end grades.
Yeah.
So.
Dude, that's awesome. I had no idea that your relation to that. So and you said you spent some time in Sport Rock, DC. That's my hometown, sadly to say.
Cool.
Sport Rock was not around when I was a kid, nor was really accessibility to rock climbing in general. And did you route set for them?
No, I was more teaching belay classes at the time. I had come back. My early introduction to rock climbing was mostly through mountaineering and alpinism. I went on a Knowles semester course to learn high angle rescue and wilderness first aid and all of that stuff. And we got an introduction to rock climbing through that. I came back, decided I wanted to be a rock climber. This is all I wanted to do in my life. And Sport Rock had just opened up in the DC area. This was like, I believe 94 was my first introduction to Sport Rock, and then like 96 is when the summer of 96 was when I started working over there. And I don't think I was qualified to route set at that time. I was just, teaching belay classes.
How old were you at that time, if you don't mind me asking?
20.
Okay. Yeah. So, wow. And so you had done Knowles mountaineering and high rescue training before that. So you got started pretty early comparison, I would say, to majority of the general public that's getting into it now. And unless you're a team kid, then it's a totally different story.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's funny that, my perspective was that I got into it late. Because I saw like Chris Sharma, Tommy Caldwell, Katie Brown, and Beth Rod, and like the early kids, and I was 6 or so years older than them, So I was like, oh, I missed the boat. But yeah, I mean, I was really lucky. I had the opportunity to be introduced to, I mean, I went to high school in DC. I was a city kid and grew up between DC and New York City. And, but I was introduced to rock climbing through Knowles, which was an exceptional opportunity. And that just kicked it off for me. So yeah, like early 20s, that's all I wanted to do. I went to school for a couple years at Bates and was studying anthropology and African American studies, and so, got super inspired by a professor there, David Jenkins, who is teaching anthropology, and he was talking about Peru and the spread of the Black Plague, and he showed us all these images of the Andes that he had gone and done these first ascents on. And it just captivated my imagination. And so much so, I don't think he expected this, that I left school and decided, okay, this is what I'm doing. I'm gonna rock climb.
Dude, that's awesome. Yeah, I think that was probably not the intended effect, but I'm sure he's proud of it now. Hell yeah.
I hope so.
And so now you're in Truckee, California. And what is your wife's name? Shauna, nice. And did you guys meet climbing?
Yeah, we did. We met actually at Seneca Rocks in West Virginia.
That's a scary place to rock climb.
I mean, yeah, it's pretty wild. It's like, I don't know what it's like, a fractured quartzite, and it's that thin.
It's like razor blades coming out of the ground. To me, it always creeps me out because I'm like, I feel like one of these things are just going to dislodge and slide right out, but nothing really moves on you. But it's still terrifying. Yeah,
it's old and fractured and just has a very spooky vibe. And then when you're up on top of that fin, and it just drops away on either side, and it's just so thin across. So it's a real interesting place to climb. But Shauna came with some friends, showed up on a full moon night, and we just struck up a conversation. Seemed like we were both in the same place where we were, in that post-teen, disconcerted, bummed on all the things that our parents in the past generation had done. Didn't really want to be in school. All we wanted to do was rock climb and work to support our rock climbing journey, and had the luxury, the privilege of being able to move into a pickup and travel the country and the world rock climbing.
Nice. How long were you guys doing that before you actually kind of, I guess, settled down? Like, where was your first place where you're like, okay, we're going to call this home? And I imagine it was near climbing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we kind of fiddled back and forth, but we ran out of money and got sick in Waco tanks, and decided that we needed to get somewhere warm because we both caught this nasty cold and we needed to get jobs immediately. So we drove to Las Vegas, and we were able to get jobs at the Powerhouse, and I think it was Rocks and Ropes was the competing gym that was across town at the time. And so we each got a job at the gym and rented an apartment in the back of a house where I believe some meth addicts were living in the front of the house. I think. I'm not really sure what was going on, but it was the cheapest apartment and the only one that we could afford. And so, yeah, it was Red Rock was the first, and kind of tying back to Boone. I think it's Fear and Loathing, this like 12A that was there, was like one of the first routes that we did when we got there.
Oh, nice.
Really beautiful.
I've been there quite a bit. That's probably the one place I've logged more hours climbing than anywhere else in the country. And that place, yeah, you can climb there for virtually forever. I call it alpine cragging, unless you're sport climbing and bouldering, but then it's like easy. It's beautiful.
It's so beautiful. So friendly. Yeah. And you can get back into those canyons in the summer, and it's a little bit cooler. And in the winter, you can go up to the crags. It's just like an amazing place.
It is. And now in Truckee, do you guys have climbing near you now? And are your kids into climbing yet? Or are they still too young?
So much climbing. There's so much right around here. The granite is really, truly exceptional. It's not dense in the way that like Fontainebleau is dense, where you can walk into Bacuvier and just have 1,000 boulder problems right there.
Mm-hmm.
But the quality is totally there, and it's a little bit spread out. So you kind of need to know where you're going or have a pickup so you can kind of cruise back and to find some of these boulders back out in the hills. But it's really, truly amazing. And for routes and bouldering and alpine climbing. And my kids are 5 and 10, and they're into climbing in their own way. Like Holly, the 5-year-old, was just out with me at the boulders the other evening, cheering for me and spotting me.
That's awesome.
So just she and I, we go out a lot. Yeah, it's so fun.
Oh, that's great.
Nina, my older daughter, she climbs. She claims that and I feel like this is like the most privileged statement on earth, but she only will climb if we go to Fontainebleau. So she loves the boulders, the sandstone in France, but other than that, she could care less.
I mean, I'm gonna agree with you on that one. That is definitely some privileged stuff to say. That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah, totally.
Oh man, I could just imagine an 8-year-old telling me. You said she's 8, correct?
10.
10. Oh, I can imagine that conversation. Oh, that's beautiful. Well, hell yeah, man. I did not know that you, I mean, I've heard your name for years, and I've known you've been in the industry for years. And I think it's actually really cool. And it's actually, I think it's really exciting for people to hear that. That's kind of like the industry struggle, I would say, like the story, how a lot of people in the early days get in the industry. And I think it still is that now with the advance of mega gyms and different things like that. I think, how you can get into the climbing industry is different, but it kind of it's divided. And I think you've made a really beautiful leap to more of like the corporate world and the entrepreneur world, and then the innovator world with Kaya, comparison where your roots are really boots on the ground. And, myself, I started out just coaching in a gym. I became a climbing coach because I actually borrowed a buddy's car to go to lunch, and I got into a car accident, and I told him I would work for free, just coaching some kids for a while until I paid him back. And by the time I paid him back, he was like, I don't want to coach kids anymore. You can have this program if you want. And I just, my boss was real generous with me. And then, I did the math, just working with kids and what you can make. And I was like, I think I can make a living doing this. And, 14 years later, still, 14 plus years later, still at it. So.
That's awesome. That's super cool. Yeah. Your work with kids is really inspirational. Coaching in general, I think the fact that you're helping people progress and deepen their love of the sport and giving them the tools to get better, I think that's really inspirational. But then, taking that to the youth and tooling them up to have a healthy climbing life, I just think that's an awesome mission.
Dude, I love it. That's kind of my goal in life. I just want to teach people how to rock climb, and I want to bolt and make rock climbing places for people to go and climb. Like my dad always said, you got 2 hands in life. You can do 2 things really well. Anything beyond that, know that it's not going to be. So decide what's important to you, and getting people climbing and teaching them how to do it and providing it for them outdoors are single-handedly like my life's mission. So I appreciate that comment. It means a lot. And, people ask me all the time, why do I coach kids? And I tell people selfishly, it's so I want to make climbers so people will vote, make choices, and do things that preserve climbing areas and wild spaces. I was like, but I completely have an agenda, and I have no shame admitting that at all.
I love that. Yeah, that's kind of the same for Kaya. That's why I joined Kaya, and that's why we're building Kaya. We want people to deepen their relationship to climbing and the community, and give them the tools to be healthy and progress and deepen their connection. So similar thing.
Yeah, and Kaya is an awesome tool. So I'm not going to assume that everyone listening to this podcast knows what Kaya is. So could you just kind of give a brief description of a rundown of what it is and where they can get it, and then why do you like it? So you work for the company, but I think anybody who actually uses Kaya has features and things that they like about it. And I'll tell you mine, if you tell me yours. And then, so.
Sounds good. So Kaya is an app. You can get it in the App Store, in the Google Play Store, or the iOS, the Apple Store. And, it's really like a digital companion to your rock climbing journey. It's a place where you can find beta videos of climbs, like how to do the climb or how to do the boulder. You can find information about the boulders or the routes, indoors and outdoors. We have a lot of good indoor information because we have a lot of partner gyms. One of our toolkits is a tool called Plastic, where the gyms are using Plastic to manage their route inventory, and the route setters are figuring out what they should set for the day and working with each other through Plastic. And through that, we get name, grade, color, some movement tag information that gets put into Kaya. So there's a lot of good route information in Kaya. And then we build what we call data visualization and analytics tools to help you understand the patterns within your climbing. And through those observations of different patterns of what you've done, where you've been over a given time period, you can start to extract how to get better. And the first part of it is just understanding. So what I love is the access to the community, because people are uploading videos, fist bumping each other's achievements and celebrating the things that they've done. They're also just sharing information with each other via video. And then you can, figure out what you want to climb on next. So finding the right climb in the gym or finding the next good project outside. And with the toolkits, you can track your progression and understand the basic patterns of your climbing and use those to train.
That's awesome. And so, yeah. So what is your absolute favorite feature of the thing?
Oof. That's a hard question because there's so many that I like, and I mean, I realize I do work there, and I am working directly with the team building the product. So it's like one of these things where I'm so biased, but I'm just looking at Deuce's Hip Hop. I'm looking at a video of Devin Dabney right now on a climb called Jiggles V3 on the tension board in the feed. I love watching the videos. I love keeping track of my projects. I mean, personally, for me, I love to go climbing outdoors, and because I have access to so many great rock climbs around here, I track my progress on my projects. I can upload videos, store my attempt videos is something that I really like doing, and looking at data of how I'm going to try things that I haven't unlocked. So I love that. I also like interrogating through my data and just extracting patterns, trying to figure out, like, am I better on a board? I own a grasshopper board. So am I better on a grasshopper board, or am I better in the gym, or am I better at in Bishop? And I can see those patterns. So it's kind of hard for me to select one of them. I would say, like, if I was to summarize, the thing that is most unique about Kaya is the intersection of a social platform with the data and analytics. So it's almost like Strava meets a social platform.
That's cool.
And the idea there is not to sell ads, but actually to allow the community to share information with each other, and that core essential data.
Yeah, no, that's actually awesome. And that's honestly one of my favorite features. What you're talking about is being able to see your own patterns, because all my clients that I coach and I require them to use it so I can see their progresses in the gym. Cause they'll tell me I sent a V5 today. I'm like, that's fantastic. I'm really excited for you. That means nothing to me because I can't see what you did, and I'm like, really, I'm genuinely excited. But if they're asking me in the context of what is the next step? And I'm like, well, it's hard for me to tell you what the next step is because I didn't watch you do the V5. Was it a straight struggle bus all the way up to the top and you were just happy to get to the top? Or did you walk this thing like getting out of bed, and it makes a huge difference. And so my favorite feature from a coaching perspective is being able to just watch people's beta, because I think the beauty, and this kind of comes back from your boots on the ground experience with rock climbing, you've done so much of it. I think you can pick out patterns, but I think to the novice climber and your everyday climber who's just getting into climbing, we have to teach them as coaches, and we have to like really show them
Mm-hmm.
how to identify these patterns. And you can't do it unless you video them. And I remember we first started videoing people on cheap iPads and tablets we could get maybe 5-6 years ago. And, it was just constantly deleting them and going back, and you'd have to go through and pick and hold your favorites, or like, oh, this is a great example of, I want to show a paddle, or I want to teach a kid like what actual flagging looks like or anything. And it was always this like trove. And now you guys have really created a treasure trove from a coaching standpoint of view, where I have like my favorites that I know where they are, even in other people's accounts. Like I have a short list on my phone that I have, and I just have their name and when the boulder was, so I can go to it and I can use it as examples. And so that's like the best thing in my opinion. Like that is just, you can't, Albert Oaks says it best, is like the best coach you have is yourself. And so Kaya, in my opinion, is the best tool that you can bring to the table to make you a better coach for yourself. And then me personally, my favorite tool is the most painful tool. And it's the thing that I can't remember what it's called, but it's where it kind of helps you get your climbing average. And I find it so funny because like I can climb harder than my climbing average is, but I don't do it enough. And I'm always just like looking at it, and I'm like, my ego is hurt a little bit. And I'm like, okay, I need to like average this out, because I know I can do this, but that's it. But it's been such a beautiful thing for me because, my ego always attacks me, where I was like, I'm a coach. I should be able to do this. I should be climbing at this. Should. And I tell the kids, if shoulds were fishes, we'd all have a fish fry. If wishes were fishes, we'd all have a fish fry, but it's not a thing. And I like it because it helps me ground myself, and also realistically gives me a real world perspective, because I think that tool is so important, because my athletes that have been using it consistently, I ask them, I'm like, hey, just look at what your average is. And if you're going outside for the first time and you want to go outside and just slay routes, you should, based on what you're doing here. So like, you're going outside in a couple months, start tracking your stuff so you can kind of see where you are. And I find that people have a lot of success. They'll go just a little bit under it, have some fun, and then they'll start pushing the grades. But they honestly have a real sense of where they are. And it's the simplest tool there for them, if you have no idea really how to use the analytics of Kaya, or how to understand what we're talking about, develop see patterns in your climbing or anything. That is the simplest tool that you can just look at, you put volume and quantity in, and then this is the beautiful information you get. And I think it's simple for people to digest and use and apply it to outdoor rock climbing.
That's awesome. Both the beta farming, like with the videos, and like looking at movement patterns that you mentioned up front. And then, I think you're referencing the intensity zones, which kind of help you understand, where a given climb grade maps for you in terms of how hard it actually is for you. Because like
absolutely,
a V5 for a V10 climber is very different than a V5 for a V5 climber. On the videos side, that was the aspiration, is to create almost like a peer-to-peer coaching network. This is a phrase that was lent to us by Andy Walsh, who is over at the Liminal Collective, and he's one of our advisors. He was the former U.S. ski team coach, Olympic coach. And he was just like, people can look, if someone is within what he called the zone of proximal development, someone who is like just a little bit better than another person, or just a little bit, in development relative to the person that's, a little bit further along than they are. If they're close enough, they can see each other and they can pick up the nuances of what that person is doing, and they can learn and mimic their movement patterns and get better. And so I love the idea that you're showing people these videos as inspiration on, either it's like just learning a skill, how to toe hook or heel hook, or actually like unlocking a subtle movement in a pogo, or the way in which you twist your hips or this or that.
Mm-hmm.
You see that in the video. I could talk about it, but when you see it in the video, you're like, oh, okay, that's the unlock.
Oh yeah. The proof is in the pudding. I mean, you got to taste the pudding to know whether it's good or not. And I think that's just the issue. It's like, hey, what's the age old saying? Someone walks up to you and they got rental shoes on and a rental harness. How do I get better at rock climbing? Everyone says the same thing. Who's worked in rock climbing? Just climb more. In the beginning, just climb more. But like, I always said that, but then it kind of did frustrate me growing up and hearing that and even saying that myself, because I would remind me of, and I have a little bit of dyslexia. And so that has always tripped me up. And I always used to get so annoyed in middle school and in high school when a teacher would be like, I was like, how do you spell this word? And she's like, look it up in the dictionary. And I'm like, woman, man, I do not know how to spell the word to begin with. And yeah, you can kind of sound it out. And some of them you cannot. Like, like Cat Williams does a great skit on knife. And he was like, why is the K silent? But that's kind of the whole thing with it. And it would frustrate me a little bit, but I never really thought about it that much because people would ask that question so much and so often. And I think Kaya's kind of the answer to that. Like, yeah, you can climb more, but then you can also watch how is it done better? Because that's really what we're trying to do. We're just trying to move better on the wall. We're trying to move better on a vertical surface. We say this to the kids all the time. Are you trying to send or are you trying to learn the move? One will allow you to send more routes than the other. And I think Kaya is a very good complement to that. And so you came onto the project after it was already started.
Yeah, I came on. I was an advisor from the beginning. Austin Lee started the project originally. And he then began to collaborate with Mark Bourguignon. And Mark had built Plastic, the route setters tool. Austin had a vision for the Kaya, or originally it was called Red Point. And he was going to take the route database that was, collected into Plastic and then publish it out to Red Point, which would be a consumer app for people to log their indoor climbing. And they had new route notifications as a component of this. So he asked me if I would advise him as he started the company. And I was kind of between gigs at the time. I had sold my company, Vibrant Data, to Rakuten, and I was just kind of trying to figure out what to do next. And Austin wanted some help on both just how to think through the business and like what would be a good legacy project for climbing, because we're both core climbers. And the original inspiration for this was like, how do we build something rad for the climbing community? So I started just advising on the side. And then in, I guess, December of 2019, January 2020, they asked me to join and lead the product team. And this was around the same time that Kim Ang joined. And she was formerly working at IDEO. And she was going to take over with marketing and strategy and really building out the brand. And I just looked over and saw this team of, young, super inspired engineers, designers, and at their core, rock climbers. And I thought, wow, because I actually, at that time, I was like, I'll never work in tech again. I'm done. I don't really have I'm not inspired. But when I saw this team and I saw what they were aiming to do and the legacy that they wanted to leave for rock climbing, they inspired me to join. And so I've been with it for a little over a year and a half and just, loving the journey of building out this product.
That's awesome. I did not, it's funny. I guess as a consumer, you never really think about all the people that actually really go into this program and building it out. I always, outside of watching, sitcoms about startups and different things like that, I didn't realize that's cool that everyone in this team was a climber at their core. And I think that's not something that I think of, especially, maybe I don't know a lot of apps and programs developed for a very specific purpose. But I think that's definitely, that comes out in the app. You can kind of see that, how you move, the content that's shown. I mean, you guys definitely care about it. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, everybody on the team, with the exception of our lead designer, who's amazing, Jared Bell. He's into sports broadly, like all kinds of sports. His deep passion is fitness apps. But everybody is a climber, and my foreign mission is to try to get Jared to climb at some point and identify himself as a climber.
Awesome.
But yeah, everyone who really is a climber and loves it and has had their own individuated journeys, personal journeys with climbing. And climbing has really been a gift to each one of us. And so it is, you're right, it's like super unique. Not any time in my career have I had the perfect confluence of like domain expertise for me personally with like analytics and, product level innovation and technology, coupled with this thing that I'm so passionate about, rock climbing, and then design. And then this great team that surrounds it that is also equally as passionate, but bringing about climbing and then bringing their own domain expertise, whether it's, Austin with data science and Kim with brand and vision, Mark with technology. I mean, I can go down the list of all the wonderful people and coaches. We can expand out to the community board and the collective that which you're a part of. Natasha Barnes and Simon Moore on, like, you were referencing the intensity bands earlier, the averages that people look at. I mean, those concepts really emerged from work we did with them. And, we had conversations with Lattice and just endless people have made contributions into Kaya. And at their core, they're all climbers and they all want to see something come to life. And so it is really a unique and special opportunity to be a part of this.
Do you guys as a team ever get to go out and climb? I understand with the reality of COVID and things that are going on in that, but does the team ever get to throw down and are there any standing projects for everyone? I just want to know where to stalk people on Kaya or on their social media.
Yeah, totally. So right when I started, so I actually officially started like December 2019, but they asked me to go with them on a team trip in November of 2019, and we went to Waco, and it was awesome. We just all got to climb together, eat together, and just hang. And then we did these sessions on like, well, what's the future of the climbing gym, and what's the future of the healthy climbing community, and what's the role that we want to, what role do we want to play in that, and what do we want to build? So it was, a little bit of work and a lot more play. And then because of COVID, we snuck in a couple trips here in Tahoe. And then I know that Kim, Mark, and Jen DeBellis got together, and Austin got together up in Squamish this summer and got at the very end. And now we're going to do a team trip to Bishop in the middle of November. And everyone's got their project list. And, we range in abilities from very beginner to very elite. I think Brian Boyko was on the national team back in the day. He's an absolute crusher, so he'll definitely lead the charge, and we'll chase after him. But
awesome.
Yeah, we're going to get together and climb. We love to get together and climb. And we actually try to use the app. That's one of the things that we do is we try to put it in play in the field and see where it breaks and where it's good. And we try to be super critical of how can we improve it. But we do that in the process of just, playing and going climb together.
That's cool that you guys actually get to train together and actually get to climb together. I know as a coach and our coaching staff, that's like pretty important to us. And I know COVID definitely ruined it for us because we, as a staff, we could not do our annual coaches trip. I do an annual trip every year, taking a bunch of friends climbing during Memorial Day weekend. And I had to shut that down because it's just, it just wasn't for us. it was such as coming from Dallas and to small towns anywhere around us. It's just, it wasn't responsible. So I'm super excited that you guys at least have it in your backyard and you're able to get out on it consistently. You know, how long do you see yourself working with the Kaya app now? I mean, I know it's probably not going it's thriving and growing, and it's only growing into what it's going to be. And I can't imagine, I don't know what it's going to be in the future. I know right now, me using it, I enjoy it, but like, I guess, is there any long-term goal for you?
Well, obviously, I have personal goals, and then I have aspirations for Kaya. I'd love to see Kaya turn into the digital hub of climbing and the climbing community. And so all the indoor gyms and the board, we'd love to see them all on there and thriving and communicating with each other through the app. We'd love to see outdoor data in there and route information. We partner with local climbing organizations and access funds to basically host various events, and they use Kaya to raise funds.
Oh, that's
awesome. Long term, that's really gratifying, because I feel like it's one part stewardship and the other part is, for nonprofits that don't necessarily have a great fundraising vehicle all the time. Some of them really do. They can run challenges on Kaya. They can responsibly host it in outdoor crags, and then they can put onto Kaya whether a route has access issues or peregrine falcon nesting or whatever happens to be the thing that's going on there. So, and then they raise money for the organization. So from that perspective, just bringing the ecosystem of all the various players in the climbing industry together onto one digital framework, that is the aspiration. And then with that, we focus all of the energy and data of all those different orgs in service of rock climbers. So that rock climbers can track their own progression using the training tools and the analytics and the visualizations and the programs that we'll be creating. So really, we want it to be your digital companion for your whole rock climbing journey, and to be the hub and home of climbing broadly. And so that's really the aspiration. There's like lots of things we could go into in either side of those things, whether it's like the data set itself, like the outdoor data. I just wanted to call out that one of the things that we're focused on right now is like, how do we protect personal data and how are we going to treat the outdoor data? So one of the projects that we're working on right now is to open source our outdoor data repo. So any group or person can use that data. And then anyone, a climber who puts their data into Kaya, they own their data, and any gym that puts their gym route information into Kaya, they own that data. And any board company that puts their climbs onto Kaya, they own their data.
That's powerful.
So there's I hope so. I hope people see that, like, over time, especially as we think about like Facebook and Instagram and all of the targeted ad stuff coming up and the questions around who owns what. I think that if we create a framework where everyone can load in their data, but we build products which are based on the analytics, but they still own their core data asset, I think it creates a mutually symbiotic ecosystem where we can all help each other.
No, dude, I think that's amazing. I did not actually know that was a feature of Kaya, and I think that's honestly extremely like real generous and noble, because anyone who understands anything about tech, like with all this stuff going on, as you said, with Facebook, and like your data is the most valuable thing that you have nowadays. You know, it's like used to be your checkbook when you're or our parents are growing up. You can't lose your bank account number. You can't lose this. Like if someone can hack into your data, your social media, the things where you be you online, and you know, in the light and in the dark, where it's the full encompassing version of you, you know, on other platforms. But with Kaya in our climbing world, I think that's really awesome. And I think that's really, really noble. And I think anybody who understands like what privacy really means to them, because I know I do, just like creating this podcast, creating content and things like that, like, you know, you give up a certain amount of it. And I think we as human beings, sadly to say, are slowly being conditioned that like you must give up a certain amount of personal data in order to just be involved in the world or be involved on a digital platform. And I just want to say kudos to like, that's big, because that really does create, I don't know of any other apps that do that. And so I'm very curious to see what this digital landscape will really kind of unfold and kind of grow out of that. That's like, I just, you know, I can't even imagine really what that will grow into. I know you're starting off with a good solid foundation with that. That's cool. I had no idea.
Thank you. Yeah. We hope it grows into a mutually symbiotic marketplace, you know, where climbers own their own personal data, and that's basically their currency that they're trading.
So I don't know about you guys, but this whole conversation about data and rights and hustling and being on the grind has got my brain moving a million miles an hour. And I'm super amped to continue this talk and to really just reconnect with David and dive into this. If you guys have not already, please check out the Kaya app. Please look into this and just do yourself a favor and get all the tools and the resources you need. All right, so let's get back into this episode and enjoy.
You know, like the beta video that you load up onto Kaya, that is something that people benefit from broadly. And so like, it's a little bit hard to measure what the benefit is of that, or, you know, maybe attach a numeric value to it, but it is valuable. And when someone goes and shows up at a crag and then looks over at that beta video and they have the instant unlock and send, then that was really meaningful for that individual. And likewise, you know, with the outdoor route data, we don't eat, no individual owns the crags.
No.
We all, you know, this is a community resource. And so we just feel like it's the right thing to do is to curate this large scale data set that anyone can use in any way that they see fit for the benefit of the community. And, you know, our job as a business is to make great products that extract value out of those data, but not to exploit the personal data itself. And a lot of my perspective was shaped by, I was part of a research project that was sponsored by Intel in 2012 and led by an ecologist and TED speaker named Eric Burlow. And it was called We the Data, and it was looking at personal data ecosystem. We did a bunch of research and interviewed 50 tech luminaries at the time, trying to identify ways in which we could democratize personal data. And this actually became the cornerstone that William Hoffman, who was working at the World Economic Forum at the time, used to start to shape GDPR, data protections in Europe. So my perspective on this really comes from all of these tech luminaries who had built big businesses in various ways, and all realized that personal data was like fundamentally the most valuable thing into the future. And they all, or at least most of them, lamented the fact that like personal data was, the business models were essentially exploiting that data, where there was another possible framework where the personal data could be owned by the individual that was putting into it. That was the currency that they brought to the table, and that they could be accredited value for bringing that into the system. And then that would lead to a mutually symbiotic business framework, and would largely be a much more robust business than one that just exploited folks without their the freemium model purports to trade services for use of your data, but the company benefits much more greatly, at least from a monetary perspective, than the user does. So we're trying to like flip that a little bit and put the power back into the people's hands who are using it, and we benefit because we're still making money through the premium subscriptions, and that's not based fundamentally on your personal data. That's analytics that we build, tools that we build.
How much is the premium membership again?
So for this year, it's going to be $29.99, and we're going to start with a $14.99 offer out the gate.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So I think this is cool because I don't know, when you were describing this, so the word that came to my mind was sweat equity. Like you're still allowing someone to have that, because you're right. Like in a system where, where the whole goal is to own someone's personal data, well, it's just one decision. And I've recently been reading this book. It's called The Streets of Shaolin. And it's like a full saga to like how Wu-Tang Clan came together. But in the first two chapters, one of the things, it lays the foundation of the ghetto, the Bronx, and, in the 1970s, 60s, and then, early 80s, barely. But really, we're talking the core is between late 60s and all through the 70s. And all these guys that came up with hip hop, came up with rap, there was nothing there for them. All they had was their words and what they could create on their own. And so there's sweat equity putting into their craft, whether it was Grandmaster Flash, creating the first mixer, or DJ Kool Herc, who started the original jams, but it was all their own sweat equity. And the thing is like, I think in a weird way, like you're kind of creating a place where you can do that with creating your own content. I understand this is all in the umbrella of the climbing industry here, but just coming from someone who's like, people call me like Chris Hampton, and Devin and I talk about this. It's just hustle every day, all day, hustle 5,000. Like my brain never stops working. I'm always like, wait a minute, you can make a business out of this? Let's do this. Let's go. Let's have fun. Let's create freedom. Let's create the life that we want to live, and let's work to live. Let's work to live, not live to work. And so I think you're really creating that on a digital platform, because if I can create sweat equity and I create really great content, I have a lot of stuff out there and I own it, it builds value towards me. So I think, well, yeah, you might not be able to attach this dollar amount to it or this actual thing about it, but sweat equity generally doesn't have a dollar amount. It's just you busting your butt and making your dream and making your things, whatever you're trying to do, a reality. You're bringing it forth. And once again, whether that's you sending your first, 5'8", 5'9", 5'10", 5'14", or you're going for silence, it doesn't matter. I think the thing is you are allowing people to do that in a way where they can do that with their climbing. And then as the nature of the platform evolves and the market evolves, you're still giving freedom and creativity for your members and the people involved in this thing who are paying customers or not, really to kind of like bring beautiful ideas to the table with their data, with their product. And, I think it's cool. I think it's really cool. I don't know. I just like, that was the correlation that came together in my brain of, wow, like you can really grind this out and you can get, obviously you're going to grind and you're going to hustle and you're going to get really good at your climbing. But, if you, depending on where this goes, it's going to go somewhere great, you can really get more out of it. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And I'm really curious to see what this landscape is going to be. Cause that's what I was saying. Like the beauty and the worst thing about the hustle and the grind and coming out of a place with nothing is you can't see a future for yourself. That's the beauty of it. So anything is possible. The worst thing about it is you can't see a future for yourself. So you've got to be someone who's willing to just put the work in. But I mean, right. The same can be said about climbing. None of us see us sending our projects. I mean, we can visualize it, especially if we've been climbing long enough. We can visualize the moves, but actually seeing you send your project, I mean, that's daunting. It's very hard. And it's an emotional, it's a mind, it's the heart, the body, and the heart, the mind, and the gut all getting involved. And it's really hard to get them all aligned to see you send your project. And I think I don't know, it's just real beautiful to me. So I went on this tangent with this.
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, there's so much that you just brought up that it has so much resonance for me with the pathway to progression and sending your project. Some of the analytics that we are working on right now, there's some cornerstone, I guess, things that you can measure. One is what we're calling velocity. How many attempts does it take you to send something that's hard for you? So literally just a count of attempts, or how many sessions does it take you? And then we have a tops rate, which is like a success metric. How many, all the things that you tried, how many did you get on top of and were you successful with? And then we have a workload score, which is kind of a measure of capacity. So if you can climb V5 and that's your 90% of like your hardest climb that you've ever climbed, somewhere like maybe the hardest climb you've climbed is V6 and the V5 is like 100 points. We assign a point value to each of the grades. So all of the climbs that you're doing, you can track this workload score and your velocity, the speed at which you're sending. And maybe you're working on a project at a grade that's, beyond you right now, but you can basically track a path to increasing your capacity through your workload score and watch your velocity. And at easier grades, like maybe the things that are like at your 80% or your 70% or even your 90%, they should start to, you should start to send faster. So maybe it was taking you 8 attempts previously, and now it's dropping to, 6, 3. And when you get to that point, you kind of know, okay, I'm prepped up. I'm ready to go try this project that's really hard for me. And so just tracking along what you were talking about, being able to see a pathway to success, it just started making me think about these different tools that we're building that hopefully give people the ability to see the forest through the trees and just see like, where am I going? But there was one other thing I wanted to track back to, which was, so you were talking about the hustle and I love the hip hop references, because I think about climbing and like coming up with new beta in a very similar way. It's like things that have never been invented before, and you just turn your toe this like completely different way, and suddenly it unlocks it. And so I think about that almost like this IP that gets shared across the climbing community. But in terms of monetization, because you were talking about, hustling as a coach and creating that content. So that's one of the things that we're exploring on Kaya right now is, okay, if you are a coach, Mario, and you create this awesome program, can you create a class on Kaya with video content that you can monetize? Right now, we're monetizing on our premium subscription, but we know that there's all these great coaches out there that could really help people broadly, and especially if they could scale their business, because I'm not sure how many people you feel like you can work with at any one time, but with digital frameworks that allow you to measure and see patterns and all of the video that's being handed back to you, I suspect you could work with a lot more people, and or someone could just purchase this great module that you create and then follow along on their own. And then occasionally you can drop in, they could ask for feedback from you. So we also want to create some opportunities in the future for coaches and gyms to create their own classes and allow for people to literally, like in your case, literally make money off of the great content that you're creating.
Yeah, no, you're in line with this. It's funny. When I first saw Kaya really coming onto the scene, that was the first thing I thought of. Like, I was like, oh, this would be a great thing. Cause I've used like Trainerize, I've used Train Heroic and all these other programs for like the fitness side of it. But there really has never been anything that allows me to really work with a client and their climbing, kind of going back to their data again, their content. Like it allows me to kind of like go through. Cause I said this earlier in the episode, it's like, I would have I probably still have this old, Amazon Fire tablet lying around that's probably got 10 or 15 people's climbs in it, and me just standing back there and holding it because they were like the perfect example of what I had then.
Right.
And yeah, I think this is amazing. And I think this is, I mean, the landscape is going to change. And that's one of the reasons why I definitely believe in Kaya, and I believe what you guys are doing, because I don't know, it's like, for those, I'm trying to remember who said this, is like, if now you know, if you don't know, now you do. And I think when you kind of start using Kaya, if you don't know what Kaya is really for and how it can help you, if you actually get into it, then you do know, and then you're in the know. And I think that's kind of like the cool thing about it. It's just nice to have something and literally your own coach in your hand. And me as a coach, it just makes that job so much easier. And I'm psyched on that. A question I have for you, and this is more for, I guess, people of our caliber who are a younger version of us. What skill sets or what experiences did you go through, or skills that you learned working in a gym between route setting, shaping holds, developing, climbing? I mean, everything that you've kind of gone through, but what experiences do you really feel like shaped you or really prepared you to step into the role that you are in now? Well, not role, but like the lifestyle, the things that you're doing now, helping run this Kaya company. I mean, I'm sure when you were washing, hold, and setting, this was the farthest thing on your mind. And yeah, so what experiences really stand out to you that kind of help you now?
Well, if I I could go through all the different career episodes that have shaped me, but I think if I relate it back to climbing, there's some real core things that, it just shaped me fundamentally. And there's so many to list off, but, just the collaborative nature of trying to unlock a boulder problem or route together, and the support network that it takes to do that. I think we kind of hold up individuals and their achievements almost as if they did them in a vacuum, but usually there's a whole, slew of belayers and people who carried ropes or put in protection or were just there on the day or filming or whatever it happens to be, supporting each other. And then we, when I was living in Salt Lake, Luke Cudney got access to, he was the Access Fund liaison, and we got access to this place called Castle Rock State Park in Idaho. And I don't think climbing had been allowed in there for like 15 years prior. And so we went out there and we did all these great highball, beautiful boulder problems. But I just know that I wouldn't have done any of them if it had not been for the crew that was around me, that was spotting me, and just protecting each other. They had my back. And I think that collaboration in a really stressful environment where, you're worried that someone could get hurt. And in some cases, we did. I think those experiences just shaped me because I realized my interdependence on people. To do great things, we need teammates, we need collaborators, and then how to just kind of accept limitations at certain points and then push through limitations at other points. And so that's kind of a subtle art too, even with the team dynamic. When do I bet you see it with your kids all the time. It's like, when do you push them and when do you support them? Or is pushing them supporting them, and it probably changes. I think all that, those are like the fundamentals that climbing gave to me, in addition to all like the personal development, which is the health and wellness and, the fitness training tools to just, gain understanding of your body and how it responds. But really those team dynamics, if I relate it to Kaya, and the idea of we're working on a project together, we're all in different phases with it, and the project itself is in different phases. Like, we talk about it internally as a team, or are we working the moves? Do we have the beta, or are we giving send goes? And we take different approaches for where we're at.
That's powerful. I love how you said that right there. I say this to the kids. You're trying to send the route or you're trying to do the move. And You are, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, everything in life can be related back to hustling, but you're just trying to make money moves. You're trying to make moves that get you closer to where
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to be. And the same is for rock climbing,
Mm-hmm.
and I think
Mm-hmm.
that's real beautiful. I'm excited. I'm definitely excited to be a part of this, and I'm excited for what you guys are bringing to the industry. I think it's so different. I think it's so new. And I think it's kind of serendipitous because rock climbing is, in its very nature, it's kind of this pioneering, kind of a conquering kind of sport. I mean, the whole point is to conquer the boulder and, conquer the rock or get to the top,
Mm-hmm.
and I think, that has its own connotations with it. But I think the beauty of what this is really doing is it's, you're opening up an avenue for something like that, but just in a way that no one knows what's coming. No one does. I mean, if there is someone who knows out there, then keep it to yourself because the rest of us probably want to still be surprised.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, and I think about it like when I first went to Font, I met some French climbers who introduced me to the idea of rather than conquering the climb, you're understanding the climb. And it's like
that's beautiful.
your moment of like, yeah, it blew me away because it's a totally different thing. It's like you're not surmounting anything actually. That mountain, you're just learning the pathway that allows you access to that experience. That for me was a pretty big shift from like this colonial narrative of like, we're planting the flag on top of this thing as opposed to like, oh, I'm just passing through. And I'm, a grain of sand on a beach. I'm lucky to be here, and I'm climbing on this billion-year-old thing. And I've understood the beta, and that's unlocking it for me to have this journey.
That's beautiful. I'm definitely taking that. That is a much, much better way. Oh yeah. That's gorgeous. I like that. Man. Wow, sorry. I'm just like sitting with that and that's just like landing on my brain. And it's just like, you hear a phrase or you hear something and it like just unravels all these like knots in your brain. And like that's just landed with me. That's real heavy. You're just learning the climb. You're just learning the easy way. Cause that's the way beta really is. But when you frame it differently, it's really pretty.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, it totally changed my conception of rock climbing at that moment.
Yeah, that's a gift. That's a gift that you gave to me that someone gave to you. I appreciate that.
Awesome.
Well, I want to kind of bring this to a close here, and I want to really thank you for your time. I do like to ask one more question about just kind of you and how you are, because, I think a lot of people will be inspired to hear this and kind of hear your story and really know that like there's still enough success. There's still enough success to go around in the climbing industry, and there's still enough room for people to grow, shape it into a better place. And outside of your experiences from climbing, is there any books or anything that has really stood out to you that have just been important to you, whether it's related professionally to your climbing or whatever, or it's just something that's just really moved you?
Gosh, so many. Most recently I had on my desk, there's a book that I read a long time ago when I went with Shauna to Tibet. She's an architect, and she had gotten a fellowship to study high altitude architecture, and so we went to Tibet. And I think it's by Robert Thurman, who's Uma Thurman's father. And I don't know if it's like the Tibetan way or just merely Tibetan Buddhism, but it's just like an overview of Tibetan Buddhism, and kind of goes through the history of it and the ways of thinking about the bodhisattva, and like all these super powerful concepts that for me were super novel, coming out of a Western religious tradition, and then to be exposed to this idea that like the bodhisattva or the Buddha is not just one person, but every being has the capacity to be the bodhisattva. Because like we're all on this project, working on it all at the same time, aspiring. that's one that's on my desk right now, that I just like pulled out because my dad saw it and he was like, "Hey, what's that?" And then I don't know. I read a lot of nonfiction at this point. I'm not so much of a fiction person. I'm looking at a book, and this is super dry, but "Staying Alive in Avalanche in Train" by Bruce Tremper.
That's awesome.
I'm going to be doing a ton of backcountry skiing. So I'm like, okay, I owe it to my people to make sure that I know what to do if like an avalanche happened, or better yet, let's not get an avalanche at all. So we're taking a bunch of classes and I'm reading this book.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That's definitely my normal go-to for books. Is I've definitely been reading more of that, and definitely like technical manual or fantasy. I'm like, nah, we're gonna read this. And I mean, it's way more. Also, too, it's just you need to know how to stay alive in an avalanche in a practical manner. It might come in handy in different situations, different areas. You never know.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, David, thank you so much for your time. I am super excited that we got an opportunity to talk, and I'm just blown away by like your entire kind of life story of where you've gone through in climbing and where you started to where you are now. And I think it's super inspiring. And I think anybody who is considering getting in the climbing industry or considering just wanting to make the industry a better place through, your skill sets, your knowledge, and your passion, I think you're a great example for that. And I feel privileged and I feel really honored to have you in the industry and making this place a better place. Honestly. Yeah, man.
Likewise, Mario. Thank you so much for having me. And, we're honored that you're collaborating with us and informing the way we're building this. So I really think that we're all building this together. And I appreciate that we got the time to connect.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is the show. David is an absolute treasure and jewel to talk to. I am definitely bromancing a little bit, maybe total man crushing here, but it's just cool. I mean, I really kind of hear a lot of his life and a lot of how my life are walking in their own similar, but not, linear paths together. But he's just so much farther along the road. And it was very refreshing and very hopeful to hear this. I hope you guys really enjoyed this episode. As always, please like, follow, subscribe, do all the things that you need to do for social media to help this podcast grow. If you have not already, please join our Patreon. We are sharing all the information. You are getting the inside scoop. And if you join the Patreon, you will hear the bonus reel of Dave and I conversation that we talked about after this episode. But if you want that, got to get on Patreon. All right, I'm out.
Drug Tone Audio.